Years ago when I was teaching Spanish, I remember the day when I realized that Vine was a big thing to my students. If you're not familiar with Vine, Vine is a now defunct social media site. And the way it worked was you would record these 6-second videos that would be played on a loop over and over and over again. It was kind of like a predecessor to today's TikTok. And my students were all about Vine. They used to watch Vine videos. They had their favorite Viners. Viners were the people who created. Sometimes they would even shoot their own and they would put them up. And there were ridiculous things. There were practical jokes. There was comedy. There were stunts. There were all sorts of things that people would watch on Vine. And it was inescapable. Like, my students talked about it all the time. And so I sat back at one point and started thinking, I wonder if there's a way that I can use this. And the more that I thought about it, I thought, well, if I get the Vine app, if I have students get the Vine app, there's all sorts of issues with that. First of all, most of them aren't old enough to use the Vine app. And secondly, if they create stuff for my class using the Vine app, it would be a pain in the neck to grade. Plus, some of my students didn't have cell phones, so there's kind of like an access issue there too. And so with all of that, I kept kind of tossing this around in my brain until I finally realized something. And I didn't realize it at the time, but this particular idea was one that would follow me throughout all of the classrooms that I ever taught in. And it ended up being a big focus of my book, Tech Like a Pirate. It's this idea. You don't need the app to create the experience. You don't need the app to create the experience. So you think about, what are the apps that students are excited about, that students use on a regular basis? And then the question is, can we recreate the experience that they have with those apps without needing to necessarily get the app? So with my Vine example, one day I show up to class and I told my students, hey, guess what? We're going to make Vines in class today. And the kids are all like, what? Are you sure? Like, teachers hate social media. This doesn't make any sense. And I was like, yes, sort of. And so we took the 6 iPads that we had in class and we recorded little 6-second videos depicting the vocabulary words we were studying. They were kind of like vocabulary vines, but it recreated the experience. They got to record these little 6-second videos. It wasn't actually on the Vine app, but it made it feel like they were doing that kind of work. And after that, I've been looking for different ways to tap into some of those apps that are so popular for students and figure out, can we recreate the experience? Can we pull little bits and pieces of the experience that they have with those apps and turn them into activities? And so, one example I came up with was Instagram. One of the more popular pieces of Instagram is Instagram stories. This is the part where, all throughout your day, you add a little picture to your Instagram story or you add a little clip of video. And as you add them, they're added to your story. And if someone hits play on your story, they can watch pictures, videos, pictures, videos, pictures, videos, almost as if it's kind of like a start to finish, like a little slideshow of your day. I remember looking at that and I thought, well, that would be a cool activity. That would be a really neat way for students to demonstrate understanding. And then again, you go into the whole, but what if they don't have the app? But what if they don't have the device? But what if they're not old enough? And so instead of using the Instagram app, we can recreate the experience of using the app in an app that students do have access to through school. And for me, that app was Google Slides. If you've watched a bunch of these videos at this point, you probably know that I have sort of like an unhealthy love of Google Slides because I kind of use it as my answer to everything. And so in this case, I thought, can I recreate the experience of doing Instagram stories within Google Slides? And I found that the answer is yes, sort of. Kind of like my answer to Vine. And so if you look here on the screen, you can see I just took a slide and I started recreating what the app looks like right here on the screen. So I did a lot of grabbing icons off of the Noun project. I mentioned the Noun Project earlier in as one of my favorite places to get icons. And so basically, I grabbed this icon that looks like a cell phone, this icon that looks like a person, and a camera, and the send button. And then I took shapes and drew in the circles and the ovals. I just kind of like text boxes. I started piecing the whole thing together until it finally looked like a cell phone with Instagram stories on it. And then I just duplicated that slide over and over and over again. And if you start to think about it, like if you frame the prompt that you want your students to respond to through the lens of Instagram stories, it kind of changes the whole experience they have with it. For instance, what if you ask students something like, if you're studying Romeo and Juliet, for instance, what if your prompt is, what would Juliet's Instagram story look like in Act 2, Scene 2? That's kind of a cool prompt to be able to answer, right? And if your students are using this social media anyway, they may already be thinking about ways to post things through that social media. And so how do we do this? It's just as simple as using the insert menu over to image, and you can use camera to snap a picture of themselves. So they could just snap a picture of themselves. They could always just insert pictures from other places if they want to as well. They can even record video. You can't record video directly through Google Slides, but if you record it someplace else and then you upload it to your Google Drive, you can stick it into your Instagram stories. A simple tool like Screencastify might let you do that, and then it automatically saves things into your Google Drive. So you have students start throwing videos and pictures into these things, and so all of a sudden there's a picture, a ridiculous picture of me. I take a picture trying to kind of like pose as one of the characters, and then I can even put in some text down here. I can even use the speaker notes to describe it a little bit more in depth. And then once the students have gone through and posted all of those pictures and added in the text to show what they know, then they turn it in. That activity ends up feeling like Instagram stories a lot, but of course, it doesn't have the hassle of downloading the app and signing up for an account and all of that. Now, if you go back to the video where I talk about how to create a template, a lot of those same things apply here. You can create what you want students not to move around and lock it into the background image, and then have places where they will interact and add those on top of the background image. That kind of thing can work. So then the question becomes, how can you create these templates yourself if you want to? For me, I would always think about what's the part of the app that lends itself to a good activity. And in this case, it was the pictures and the videos and the Instagram stories. And I thought, well, hey, you can do pictures and videos through Google Slides. How about, with some of the Snapchat games that you can play? For instance, there's a game called This or That. And the game will display these two things, and you have to choose between the two. And then you pass it over to your friend and you see what they would have picked. To do something like that, all you really have to do is just be able to identify which one of the two things you want to choose. And so there's a variety of ways to do that. You can, put a circle over the top of the answer that you want to choose. You could have an arrow pointing to it, any one of those things. And so when you can kind of start to wrap your brain around what does the app do and how can I recreate that in some way, shape, or form in your slide, then it totally works. So next question I think you might want to ask is, if I don't want to create these templates myself, where can I find them? How can I go get them? Well, I was talking in an earlier video about my templates page. And if you go to the templates page on my website, I have a whole bunch of these templates that look like lots of popular apps. So for instance, there's one here on the screen that is Yelp. If you want to have students create a Yelp review, That's one way to, for instance, have them speak for a character or put themselves in the shoes of somebody else to look at it from their perspective. You could do a Spotify playlist where you have a list of a whole bunch of songs that a historical figure might listen to and then justify your responses. There's that this or that Snapchat game. There's a Would You Rather Snapchat game, TikTok one. There's the Instagram stories one right there. I'm always, creating more and more of these. So with any of these, you have the Google Slides version and the PowerPoint version if you want to go make a copy of it or download it and then just assign it right to your students in your learning management system. That could be a lot of fun and a way that you can recreate the experience of using the app without having to actually get the app itself.